Hello everyone, and thank you for tuning in to another episode of the Free Speech Impediment with me, Adesanya. It's been a while since our last episode. Braid McAtee's been doing a great job with his podcast, and he's been putting some real good content out there. So I've been mostly focusing on writing, and as you can see behind me, I'm currently on the farm, on our family farm. So I've been here for a couple of weeks, helping out on the farm. So the free speech impediment has taken a bit of a break over the past few months, but something happened this weekend I really thought I'd love to share some thoughts on, and that was the UFC fight between my fellow boer, my kinsman, Dricus du Plessis, and Robert Whittaker from Australia. Of course, I was very pleased with Dricus' performance, and the fact that he came out on top in that fight in such a convincing and comprehensive manner. But I think what really struck a lot of people was the challenge that Israel Adesanya gave him, the verbal engagement, the things that Adesanya said to du Plessis after the fight, the way he spoke to them, to Dricus. I think it was a means of trying to assert his dominance over Dricus. His repeated use of the N-word, in particular, I think was a means of trying to show and exhibit a sense of superiority over du Plessis, because of course, Adesanya, with the current blasphemy laws, Adesanya is allowed to use the word, du Plessis isn't. So he tried, of course, to provoke du Plessis to use the word, which would have, of course, meant the end of du Plessis' career. So I think, all in all, du Plessis handled it really well, and I think he came out on top there, which I think is a real positive for du Plessis going into the next fight against Adesanya, where he'll be challenging him for the middleweight belt, the title of being UFC middleweight champion of the world. But you know, the entire feud, the entire thing about being the question of who is the most African, you know, du Plessis answered a question a couple of months back about African fighters, and he said that he and Cameron Simon, two Boers, two Afrikaners, are the real African fighters in the UFC because they breathe African air, they wake up in Africa every morning, they train in Africa, whereas, you know, Kamaru Usman, Israel Adesanya, and those guys all live abroad and have American or New Zealand citizenship. Well, Dricus du Plessis is only a South African. He lives in South Africa. It's his only citizenship. And in that sense, he does actually have a point. But it really rubbed Adesanya and Usman and the likes the wrong way. And I think part of it has to do with that idea of asserting dominance over, you know, the white man in Africa. Whereas, you know, for example, they don't have a problem with millions of Africans immigrating to France, with the French national football team being majority people from African descent. You know, they don't have a problem with that, but they do have a problem with a white guy representing South Africa. So that kind of inconsistency is, of course, an attempt in a way to try and assert their own dominance. And I think, second of all, there's an element of jealousy because I think the Nigerians and the Cameroonians realize that they don't have the capacity to train out of those countries. There aren't any gyms, there aren't any coaches, any facilities in those African countries that is able to facilitate and guide them to reach the kind of level they do and to become world champions. Well, in South Africa we do have it. Dricus Plessis is now the number one contender in the middleweight division. He trains out of Africa. He lives in Pretoria. He trains in Pretoria. And Cameron Simon is probably going to be a future bantamweight. I think bantamweight is his division. Bantamweight champion of the world. So a small gym in Pretoria is really rising and producing some of the best fighters in the world. And you'll never see this in other African countries. I think the fact that it's only in South Africa we have the capacity to do something like that. I think that also really gets under the skin of the likes of Adesanya. And it is fascinating that this desire to identify as African is such a big issue for these people, for Adesanya, even for Kamaru Usman, but in particular for Israel Adesanya, who has lived in New Zealand and the United States almost his entire life. What is interesting is that ethnic solidarity is not an issue for these guys. They openly exhibit ethnic solidarity. They openly speak about it, speak about the pride they have in their heritage, their ethnic and racial heritage. Whereas if a European or an American or even a Boer were to do the same, people get angry. Liberals get angry, cultural Marxists get angry. So that is very fascinating. And the beauty of this entire feud going on in the UFC is that blatant inconsistency is now being exposed. And the double standards is exposing certain agendas that I think most viewers of this vlog are quite familiar with. But I think the eyes of millions around the world is also being opened in the process. So yes, thank you very much for tuning in to another episode of the Free Speech Impediment. I hope to talk to you again soon.